Now let's talk about a different way to deploy a zip file with your compiled app by mounting the zip file like a file share without actually unzipping the contents. When you deploy files to Azure App Service, they get stored on a file share in the Home, Site, www.root folder. This directory is used by your app at runtime, so it's possible for a deployment to fail because of file lock conflicts. Then the app can behave in a weird way because some of the files aren't updated. One way to avoid that possibility is to copy the zip file to Azure, and the zip file itself gets mounted as the www.root directory. A few things are needed for this to work. There needs to be an application setting created called Website Run from Package, and its value needs to be set to 1. This tells App Service to look in this folder. There also needs to be a text file in that folder with the name of the zip file. You can do this all manually by connecting to the file share using FTP, but there's an Azure CLI command that can create the site packages folder and the text file for you. I'll show you that in the demo. Alternatively, you can also copy the zip file to Azure Storage and set the same application setting to the URL to that zip file. And App Service will mount the zip file from there and use it as the application code. You can secure the file from internet access using a shared access signature or using a managed identity, where the App Service has a security principal in Azure Active Directory, and you grant that security principal access to the storage account. So what are the benefits of this run as package approach? It eliminates the possibility of file conflicts during deployment, and it also ensures that only fully deployed apps are running, so no partial or failed deployments. And you can deploy the zip file right into the production slot, and it will restart the app to mount the zip file. And what are the advantages of the different approaches? Well, copying the zip file to the App Service can improve cold start performance. App services get unloaded if they haven't been used for a while to let the system conserve resources. Users might experience a delay in the app getting loaded, which is the cold start. The advantage of running the package from an Azure storage account is that the person responsible for copying the zip file to the storage account doesn't require any access to the App Service itself. They just need access to copy the zip file to the storage account. Then the App Service itself has access to mount the zip file from Azure Storage. Let's see how to copy the zip file to the App Service. I've already updated the home page and published the files to a local folder using the same publish profile I created earlier. I've also zipped up the files into a new zip file, since you've already seen how to do all of this. So this is the file we're going to deploy. But first we need to go into the App Service and on the Environment Variables screen, create the application setting needed to run the site from the zip file. The setting name is website_run_from_package. And to run the zip file from the App Service file share, set this value to 1. If you wanted to run it from Azure Storage, you'd set this value to the URL to the zip file in Azure Storage. And don't forget to save these changes. Okay, let's park this on the overview page because we'll be back here shortly. We're going to deploy the zip file from the command line using the Azure CLI. That way we don't have to do as much manual work creating the folder and the text file. If you don't already have the Azure CLI installed locally, you can download and install it from learn.microsoft.com. I've already installed it though, so I'll open up the command prompt and maximize the screen. And let's check the version of the Azure CLI. All Azure CLI commands begin with AZ, and the command to check the current installed version is AZ-version. It's all up to date, so let's log into Azure. We do that with AZ login. That opens a browser to choose an identity, and I'm already signed in with my admin account, so I'll select that. It says I'm logged in now to the Azure CLI, and back in the command prompt, it shows the subscription information. Let's clear this. And now let's run this command az web app deployment source config-zip with the parameters resource group and the name of the resource group the app service is in, the name of the web app, and then src, which is the path on the local system to the zip file that we want to deploy. I'll open up File Explorer and copy that path and paste it here. And let's copy the name of the file too. And paste that in. Now I'll hit Enter to run this. It's getting the site credentials, so again, the deployment is being authenticated with the username and password, not with the user credentials. And the JSON that's returned shows that the deployment was successful. Let's go back to the Azure portal and navigate to the site. It shows that the update worked. But let's take a look at what happened behind the scenes. We can do that from the Kudu portal. Again, just add SCM after the web app name in the URL. From here, let's go to the debug console and choose the command prompt. It says here the app is currently running in read-only mode because it's running from a package file. Let's go into the data folder, and there's a site packages folder, which is where the zip file gets deployed to. There's a zip file here, and this was renamed by Azure during the upload. Let's look at this text file. It has the name of the zip file. If you deploy multiple versions of the package, each zip file will get a unique file name, but the text file will point to the current version. So that's how to run your app service from a zip file. Next, let's take a look at another, more traditional way to deploy your code, using FTP. Now let's deploy the code using FTP. FTP is the File Transfer Protocol, which is exposed as an endpoint on the app service. So you can deploy to that endpoint in a number of ways, including using the Azure CLI, PowerShell, right here from Visual Studio, or using FTP client software. We actually created an FTP publish profile when we imported the publish profile that was downloaded from the Azure App Service. You can see it in Solution Explorer here, and I've opened up the publish profile from Azure here. FTP was just one of the methods available, and the publish URL is a specific endpoint provided by Azure for this app service. The username and password are the same ones as for the other deployment methods, and we can get those from the Azure portal also. Remember, we just download the publish profile from the overview page in the app service. Let's go back to Visual Studio. We could publish the code from here using the FTP publish profile, but that would essentially be the same as what we did before, except it would be using the FTP endpoint and the FTPS protocol behind the scenes. At least for app service, there's not much point. But remember, FTP is a standard protocol, so you can create a publish profile in Visual Studio to any FTP endpoint, not just app service. We won't do that though. We're going to use an FTP client tool called FileZilla. This is a popular and free tool available for a number of different platforms. You can download it from filezilla-project.org. I've already downloaded and installed it on my Windows virtual machine, and this is what the interface looks like. Across the top, you need to enter the connection information, which is the endpoint, called host here. Then the username and password to connect with, and the port to connect on. We can get the host name, which is the URL to the FTP endpoint, by going into the Azure portal, and down to the Deployment Center tab, and clicking on FTPS credential. FTPS is just secure FTP. Let's copy this FTPS endpoint and go back to FileZilla and paste it in the host text box. Next, we need the username for authentication. I'll go back to the Azure portal by hitting Alt-Tab on my Windows keyboard. And let's copy the username for the application scope, so the credentials specific to this app service. And Alt-Tab to switch back to FileZilla, and I'll paste the username in. Let's switch back to the Azure portal again, and copy the password. Back in FileZilla, I'll paste that in too. And finally, I'll enter the port. For FTPS, the typical port number to connect on is 990. Before we connect, we have to change a setting in the Azure portal for the app service. Just like with Web Deploy, FTP uses basic authentication, and you have to allow that for connecting to this app service. It's turned off by default. So in configuration, just set FTP Basic Auth Publishing to on, and let's save these changes. Make sure you wait until the web app settings have been updated, and you can check that in the notification area here at the top. Let's go back to FileZilla, and now let's quick connect. And now we're connected to the file share in Azure, where the existing code has been deployed. That's in the www root folder, under the site folder. We could navigate around the Azure file share using this tool, and we can drag and drop files from the local files on the left into the remote folder in Azure on the right, and those files will get copied up to the cloud. Before we deploy any code though, we need to undo something from earlier. We deployed a zip file in a previous clip and created an application setting, so the app service would mount the zip file as the www root folder and run the site from the package. We need to delete this app setting in order to prevent this behavior, otherwise our FTP deployment won't work. Now let's go back to Visual Studio and update the home page, so we'll see the changes deployed. Now we need a compiled version of the application files to deploy. We already have a publish profile that will publish the code to a local folder, so let's use that. That folder is here on the desktop. So once the publish is complete, we have a set of files we can copy to App Service using FTP. There's no need to zip these. We're going to copy the files over directly. Let's go back to FileZilla, and in the folder tree on the left, this is the local file system. Let's navigate to the desktop and open up the folder with the published files. Next, I'll highlight all the files in the local folder. And since the www root folder is already open in the remote app service file share, I'll just drag these local files over. It's asking if we want to overwrite this file. Yes, we do. It'll take a few seconds for each file to get copied into Azure. Let's go back to the Azure portal and to the overview page of the app service and browse to the deployed application. The home page has been updated, so we've successfully deployed the application using FTP.